Welcome back to Public Policy. This will be my last lecture for the course. I'm giving you next week to devote to your final. I'm certainly here to support you in any way I can in doing your best work. For those of you who have never studied with me before, and I would say that's about half of you, please return to the learning outcomes, to the syllabus, to the grading rubric, and edit your final analysis more than once. In fact, I would suggest you write out absolutely everything you are inspired to write, which will go well over the page limit, and then go line by line and edit, asking yourself whether I can credit that sentence with knowledge from the course, with knowledge from NCRP. That's usually my tip for getting the highest grade in this course. Good luck. This week, what I would like to talk about, I want to go back to what I said I would be talking about a few weeks ago, Gandhi's vision of nonviolence, which is quite important to our field, negotiation, conflict resolution, and peace building. Some of you have actually studied nonviolent resistance. Certainly most of you, being in a peace building program, see yourself to some degree as advocates of nonviolence. You may not be pacifists. I do not consider myself a pacifist. That's fine. Still, you can understand peace and nonviolence go hand in hand. What I introduced a few weeks ago is that most people don't realize that Gandhi went far beyond the liberation of India, securing India's independence from British occupation by organizing his fellow citizens and strategically maneuvering, gaining the world's attention. Much like what we saw with Desmond Tutu with South Africa, gaining its liberation from apartheid. What we saw during the Arab Spring in Tunisia. Actually, what we've seen around the world. We've seen it in the Balkans and in the Philippines, where it's called people power. And I am a student to a degree of Gandhi. I love how much of what Gandhi taught and advocated and exemplified resonates with the best of NCRP. But today I want to talk about the other parts of Gandhi that most of you are probably unfamiliar with, most of the world's unfamiliar with. The fact that Gandhi started a farm, a spiritual community in South Africa while he was there. If you've ever been to India or any other country that is centered around village living, an agricultural form of living, you will appreciate some of his perspective. He was advocating for Indian independence, not just at the national level, but for Indian independence on a personal level, that they would spin their own cloth. He was quite famous for that. Walk to the ocean to make their own salt. These were some of his tools, campaigns of liberation. But this wasn't just about liberating India, preparing Indian people for independence. It was his strong belief that environmentally, this is exactly what Indian people needed to do to create a sustainable form of living. And it's fascinating to me, now I have been to India and I have lived there for several months, and I love visiting the farms there and the villages, but as most of the Indian youth do not intend to stay in the village and to become farmers, I have shared a bit of that for me. That's not my dream, to go back to living in a small town and farming. But I do think we can learn from his vision. And there are some really important things he was talking about that we are facing today. The costs of industry, the limits of industry, the dependence that we would have on some ridiculous, practices, spending how much in energy to transport agriculture across the world while sending the same products, produce, to the place that's sending to us. This is corporate, profit and corporate productivity at its worst. It does not care about the wasting of energy and the lack of locally produced products. It only cares about the bottom line. And, as long as oil and gas are affordable, just, massive carbon emissions, I don't need to go into the detail. I think you get the vision. Because we've allowed corporations to take such a lead, and because we have prioritized, and I certainly understand prioritizing a full and prosperous livelihood. I'm for that, not against it. But a dependence on low-cost goods without regard for the other broader collective global costs. I talked a little bit about population control early on and creative ways we are finding to educate the poorest of the poor. We never talk about fathers in this discussion. It's always the burden of the mothers, of the girls, of the women of the society in order to control population. But there are creative ways, despite that limitation, that we are finding, but we have yet as a globe to come together to talk about what's happening in this world. For example, now in Gandhi's vision is coming back at the moment. If anybody is involved with AARP and the Association for Retired Persons, American Association for Retired Persons, is one of the United States' biggest and most powerful lobbies, along with the NRA, along with the Israeli lobby. They are promoting elder-friendly communities, which is a lot like what Gandhi was promoting, that we should be able to get access to what we need, to locally produced, food, other products easily by walking or public transportation. These are the things Gandhi was promoting as a sustainable lifestyle, and it's interesting that we're coming back to it. But we are doing so because we have gone towards the other extreme. Hunger in this country at the moment is due to the fact that many of the poorest communities in the cities of the United States lack any access to fresh produce. One of our alumni has been working with community gardening in LA. It's quite an important endeavor to help these people have access to fresh produce. So we're not just talking about they need to drive a few hours to get fresh produce. They do not have access to fresh produce at all. Instead, the food that they have access to is on the other side of healthy, contributes to poor health, obesity. It's just these horrible cycles we've created that somehow need to be reconsidered, redesigned, relived, using AARP language. Public transportation is a real joke, which is tragic and sad in Los Angeles, because the auto industry basically set out to destroy public transportation in order to increase the number of private cars and vehicles on the road. Now, for those of you living here with me, and those of you who visited, this is a hellish place to drive, especially if you have a commute of an hour or more to get to your substantial 4 or 5 bedroom home, out away from the city where prices are lower. I have not seen a place where public transportation is in more dire need, except for Delhi, when I've been in India, Rio de Janeiro. But they, unlike LA, have been promoting their public transit, their public systems. These are some of the things that Gandhi was predicting when he was promoting the village lifestyle. Not so much asking all of us to be farmers, to sew our own clothes, all of that. He did do some of that. But so that we were not enmeshed in these dependent, destructive ways with the corporate, industrial, military-industrial complex. We have a lot of work to do with this. Okay, I don't have a lot of time today. I want to switch over to another topic. I have mentioned that I don't think NCRP in our government agencies has the potential or the visibility that it did a few decades ago. People, you know, we went through economic bubbles. We've been enmeshed in labor management disputes about, you know, public servants wanting more, but not being willing or able to do what is needed. I don't have time to go through it, but I don't think I need to persuade you that government agencies of all types need reform. They need to figure out how to downsize and hold them accountable so that they are truly focused on and delivering accountable with public service. We see some of this happening when we see citizen oversight. I guess the governor of Maryland, who's been involved in the Democratic race, has been one of the proponents of impartial citizen oversight with police community relations. That's one example of reform. I'd like to talk about the ONSPUDs. And some of you are familiar with the organizational ONSPUDs that works for these in these different federal agencies, but that's more of a mediator role, a training development role. It's not a quasi-legal role. And I want to stress in closing with you the importance of reviving the classical ONSPUDs, the impartial, factual investigators when citizens, consumers raise complaints against the government, who investigates independently, publicizes their findings and recommendations. We need this everywhere with government because it's bloated, it's corrupt, and it's not responsive. In the environmental arena, I see it again and again. EPA, for example, is absent with the most horrendous of crises, and they should be, you know, the first on the ground. But just like with Katrina, where we saw the horrific absence of government response in the worst of that tragedy, that's what we're seeing with environmental government response. We, as NCRP, needs to take a lead with making a difference and proposing whether paid, employed, impartial, independent, classical investigators, or impartial citizen review boards. In India, they call this the Lokpal. And the youth of India has rallied with Anna Hazari's Gandhi-like lead in order to demand that there be impartial, independent investigation of all complaints against any and all government employee and official. And I think this is something that NCRP can do to really make a difference with environmental conflict. Well, I hope you have already started on your finals. I'm really looking forward to seeing what each of your particular interests has evolved in terms of an NCRP vision. And once again, I'm here to support you however I can. All the best.